All right, what is up, everybody? Coming to you live from tabletop. Coming to you live from Table Rock Beach in Laguna, one of my favorite places in the world. Used to come here when I was back in high school. Did my lifeguard training here. Used to have bonfires with my friends over in that little cave right over there. It was a nice little spot. So yes, I'm here in Laguna, and I wanted to come make a video for you guys today because we're now entering summer. We are now in the season of Cancer, and there's a lot of light at this time of year, both physically and metaphysically. And I was thinking about, okay, what am I going to be teaching over the summer? And intuitively, or not intuitively, but like naturally, this would be a time to talk about like the maturation of things, growing things, kind of taking action on new projects, letting things reach these new heights. But intuitively, what was actually coming up and what just seemed to be kind of very present both in my personal life and practice and also out there with getting feedback from people was talking about dreaming and how the art of dreaming is one that, some people understand, at least in the popular or spiritual zeitgeist, but also it's not really like talked about too much with any kind of accuracy as an actual spiritual practice or path of awakening. And my personal experience with dreaming has been a very powerful one. I've been a very consistent and lucid dreamer since I was a child, so much so that I remember I was maybe, 5 or 6. And I remember waking up and not knowing if I was still in the dreaming or if I was in the waking. And really, it was like a very scary kind of experience because I was still experiencing and seeing the dreaming while I was in my waking world. And I used to go on a ton of adventures in the dreaming as a child. I learned to fly very early. I would go, I had all sorts of different like creatures and beings that I would go visit and talk with. And I would experience all sorts of adventures. And then when I was in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, is when things really started to kind of take a big turn. And the dreaming, I would say, matured. It became a place where I would understand some of these waking spiritual experiences that I was having. And then right around the time that I was about 22, 23, is where dreaming started to become kind of like a GPS system for my path. And I remember specifically like this one time when I just turned 23 and I was like reaching a lot of success in this one job and career that I had in sales. And I just remember I would like feel so sad and depressed, even though I was like experiencing such major successes and accomplishes. Like I was the number one sales rep in the country in terms of customer retention. Like 87% of my clients would order within like a 2 or 3 week period out of like all the reps nationwide. This was like hundreds of sales reps. I had a team of like 12, 13 people. Like it was just like I was experiencing a lot of like amazing accomplishments, but I just knew there was something kind of not right inside. So I remember this one time where I was having all these dreams about like different animals, and I just like this is like when I first started looking into like indigenous based spiritual systems. And a girlfriend at the time got me this animal card deck, and I started learning about different like animal symbology and dreaming and things like that. And then this one night where I was in the dreaming and there was this burst of energy in the dreaming, and it was so strong that it woke me up, and physically I sat up in my bed and I didn't know if there was an earthquake going on because there's just this like powerful like it literally, I heard it, I felt it, and I like things were like shaking, and I didn't know if there was an earthquake going on. And then I looked outside and it was the full moon, and I just became really still, and I realized that energy and vibration was coming from inside of me. And I was just there in the full moon, and it was like being blasted by the moon. And so that was like the point where I started learning quintessence meditation, where I started learning how to go into light. And I started working with this one teacher. And then, about a year and a half later is when I met my teacher S. And so the reason why dreaming is so powerful is because, one, when we are present and we are slightly conscious, or we are just on this spiritual evolutionary path, the dreaming starts to reflect back to us what is happening in our physical world in its relationship to our psyche, our emotions, and just kind of our spiritual evolution as a whole. But more importantly, it's a place where we can actually create from. We can bring our lucidity and our conscious waking presence into the dreaming, and we can start to design and create the world that we want to experience physically, and we can start to do that in the dreaming. And we do this through three things. We do this through presence, we do this through stillness, and we do this through energy. And when we have cultivated those three things, we channel that towards intention. So we set our intentions before going to bed, and then in the dreaming we cultivate enough lucidity and stillness to where we realize that we're waking in the dream, and then we start to perform the actions that we want to see manifest in the waking world. We start performing them in the lucid dream, and that creates energetic structure, momentum, and probability. Because when you're working in the dreaming, that is like one aspect of the astral world. There's the dreaming, which is the unconscious aspect of your own mind and being. And then it is actually a doorway to the astral. And the astral is where it is a realm of more like of energy and time and space. And so, I'm sorry, more so time. No, that's incorrect. It's a realm of energy and subtle physical space and non-linear time. So when we start to create things in the astral, they begin to manifest physically. So this is one way that we can create our lives. But more importantly, you can have an entire adventures there in the astral world and in the dreaming. You can learn from different beings. You can learn from different intelligences. You can start to divine. You can receive messages, all of these sorts of things. And the reason why I'm so... I really enjoy talking about this is because when I met my teacher S, we dreamed together every single night for about a year and a half. And then we would talk about those experiences in class, in person, on the following Sundays. And I thought this was pretty normal because it was just kind of happening. And some of my other friends in the class, like, they didn't really have these sorts of dream experiences or lucid dream experiences. And, he used to tell people, or S rather, he used to say, like, yeah, Taylor, like, is a very, very accomplished dreamer. This, like, doesn't just come from one life. This comes from, like, all the other ones before. And I understand, like, more of that now, but at the time I didn't. I just thought this was, like, something that everybody could do and whatnot. But anyways, like, during those experiences, we went on adventures. He taught me many different things that he didn't talk about in the physical world. And what was actually happening was he was giving me rapid transmissions in the dreaming that was taking root inside of my psyche and my subtle physical body that then would later begin to manifest and ripple out over years and years and years and years. And things now, 8 years later, I'm just starting to understand and make sense. And this was back in like 2018. So this was 8 years ago now. And when we start to approach the dreaming from this place of curiosity and intrigue, we start to develop a degree of mastery over our own intuitive or psychic faculties, and we start to experiment and explore. And there's different ways that we can do this. There's lots of books on lucid dreaming. I've read like one or two like popular modern ones. I've looked into like Tibetan dream yoga and yoga nidra and things like that. But honestly, in my opinion, the masters of the dreaming are the indigenous cultures, not even like the yogic or the Buddhist or any of like the more Eastern mystic traditions. My opinion, the masters of the dreaming are going to come from the Toltecas, the Mexica, the Aboriginals in Australia. And the reason why is that they are one of the first, they're in all their writings or their storytellings, they actually talk about the dreaming being the spirit world. They talk about the dreaming being a doorway to communicate with nature and to work with the nature spirits. And that's a very important piece of information, because all of this that we see here, all of this manifested nature, this all has a metaphysical and spiritual counterpoint to it. It's like the, like in Stranger Things, how there's the upside down and it's like the mirror. Well, all of this exists in the etheric and the astral plane, which has a degree of dimensionality in the dreaming. So if you start to recognize nature as a part of a living, breathing, aware consciousness, living, breathing spirit, and then you bring that awareness into your dreaming, you will start to meet the counterparts of nature in the dreaming, in the other world. And you start to develop relationships that are more direct. So maybe you don't hear the spirits of nature, or you don't know how to listen to the moon or to the ocean, or understand the language that nature speaks, and that's totally okay, because that's a part of everyone's natural development cycle. But what everybody can do is they can practice their dreaming. And when they're in the dreaming, they can begin to communicate in a more recognizable form and language than what they're used to in the waking world. And so when we do this, we begin to cultivate a much stronger relationship with all of life around us. And it begins to unify these things. Like in the New Age, everyone's like, oh, all is one. Well, you can intellectualize that as much as you want, but until you begin to experience the life force that is weaving together this web of manifested reality, of creation, until you begin to actually experience the spider's web of fate and creativity and creation, then it's just all intellectual. And so dreaming is a very practical modality and way to exercise your consciousness and your awareness to be able to create better relationships with the natural world around you, and simultaneously understand aspects of your psyche that you wonder, like, why you do things a certain way. And so you can investigate that in the dreaming, and you can understand and learn about yourself. Maybe it's like some emotional traumas, or maybe it's like something, a habit. All of these things reveal themselves in the dreaming in different ways, shapes, and forms. But third, the more conscious you bring your awareness into the dreaming, the more you can actually begin to work on your goals in the dreaming, and then that actually begins to ripple out and manifest in the physical world. And I'm going to give you a little high-level example of that. So whenever you do magic, you are creating symbolic movements or intentions, or invoking different energies in this physical world in relationship to the elements. And so the elements are what is creating, is what is actually creating life here. Now, to do that, we need to understand what some traditions call the four worlds. And I'm going to give it to you from my perspective, so that we don't just kind of focus on a single lineage here. So you have the eternal, which is where everything is one. It is the self-generating consciousness of God. It is the source of all of life. And this is eternity. So everything, everywhere, all at once. That's eternity. And then you have infinity, where individuality begins to infinitely express its eternal nature. So this is where, like, you could say, like, the source of God, or the source of all of life, begins to branch out into individual expressions and manifestations. And so that's kind of happening here in the fourth world. And then you have causality, or the causal world. And the causal world is a realm of pure light and intention. So this is where the soul, or the individual, the highest spiritual essence of the individual, starts to have an impulse to manifest and incarnate or experience life. And then there's also other higher spiritual desires and dharmas. And so you have this little ball of light. So you've made it out of this, eternal unified conglomerate. And now there's this little soul. And then that soul begins to have a desire or an impulse for something. And then it begins to travel down, or at least its intentions begin to travel down into the astral world. This is the world of space and time. And then here in the astral, there's different dimensionalities to it, like different subtle dimensions within the astral. There's the higher and the lower, and it's not higher as in like good or bad or anything like that. It's just subtle dimension from like light manifesting to sound and physicality and so on, things like that. So here, from the astral, when enough energy has materialized or conglomerated, rather, into a structure that has been created, then form can manifest within the physical world through space and time. And that's essentially the creation process at a very high level. I don't want to get into like all the different polarities and things like that because it's just not relevant to this conversation today. So when we, these physical beings, we are connected to the eternal through our soul or through our light of awareness. And we're here in this physical world, and we begin to put our awareness, which is an inherent faculty of consciousness, and we begin to put our awareness and our energy and our intention on the dreaming, which is this subtle physical spiritual world that is manifesting as physical creations. So we begin to place our attention here in the dreaming, and the more presence that we can cultivate in our dreaming world, the more lucidity is developed. And the more lucidity that is developed and the more stillness that we can cultivate, we can begin to use intention and energy to create movements, impressions, shifts, and changes, and movements in the dreaming. And this is where we begin to actually truly consciously dream our dreaming life or our dreaming world. And the more experience we begin to do that, or the more experience we begin to gain with that, it's actually strengthening our psychic muscles of being able to become conscious in another dimension of space and time, or another dimension of reality. And so your physical being is what is dreaming the dream self and the dream world. You right now, you have the power to influence the dreaming. You have to cultivate that enough energy to be able to wake yourself up into lucidity, and then you have to learn how to navigate in that place. It's kind of like learning to walk. When you were younger, you could move around the dreaming no problem because it was much more natural to you because you were closer to the spirit world than when you were, now as 30, 40, 50-year-old. And once you start to begin to develop your dreaming, your sea legs, so to speak, that is when you can start to move around and actually, create change and dream consciously. And from that point, there's this awakening that happens where you actually realize that the dream self is dreaming your physical life. And there's this polar relationship between the two parts of your being. We can get into the polarities. It's a much longer. it's a different element of metaphysics. But your dream self is dreaming your physical world and your physical life, and your physical self is dreaming the dream life. All of your, you're creating your life. You're dreaming this entire experience. There's the one who dreams, there's the dreamer, and everything in between. I'll get into the yogic elements of this later because that just takes another left turn. And it's really philosophical, and I want this to be practical during this time. Summer is a really good time for physical experiences, for actually doing something, not just thinking about it and mentalizing it. That's more for fall and winter. So this is what people mean when they say that you're creating your entire life, you're manifesting everything. Is there are these parts of your being that are creating the different experiences both in the waking and the dreaming. And it is your job as a mystic or as a part of your spiritual evolution to understand the natures, the faculties, the abilities, the powers that you have. It's like learning the rules of the game. And this is part of what the spiritual evolution process is about, is learning the rules of the game, or at least learning how to move in the body that you have been given. So the more present, the more conscious you can become as a dreamer in the dreaming, the more you can influence the world here. So this is what we're going to be talking about over these next couple weeks. We're going to talk about different practices that you can try at home to strengthen your dream ability. We'll talk about practices that you can do in the dreaming and that you can do before you go to bed. Diets and plants and herbs that really help with these sorts of things. But the number one thing that will help you become and cultivate lucidity and develop lucidity in your dreaming is having strong intention for what you want to do, having stillness in your awareness, in your presence, by basically not reacting to something. Because in the dreaming, lots of things can happen, and that's where like you begin to freak out and you react with fear, and then all of a sudden you're being chased through whatever and yada yada yada. So you need to learn to be still in the dreaming and not react. You have to learn to be you have to learn to respond, and you respond through energy and intent. And then that third thing is you actually need to cultivate enough energy. So this is what I want you to start practicing, is like meditating for like 10 minutes before you go to bed. Get a cup of water, put your intention into the water, and drink the water before you go to bed. So be like, I am awake and lucid in my dream. Simple intention right there. Drink the water, go to bed. Boom. And when you wake up in the morning, keep a dream journal. So when you meditate before you go to bed, you are stilling and focusing your mind, and then you're taking that stillness and that cultivated energy and you're putting it into the water, and then you're programming your body. And the reality is that the elemental nature of the dreaming is very watery. That's why I came to the beach to talk about this, because I love the water. I love the ocean. This is my like second home. When I'm not at a physical location, if there's anywhere I'd rather be in the world, it's at an ocean. It's at the beach. And so, just like how the tides of the ocean are influenced by the moon, the strength and the strength of the dreaming and your ability to tap into different windows of awareness in the dreaming all correlate to the moon. So start tracking the lunar cycle, and start noticing what dreams happen at which stages of the moon. And there's something very important there that we'll talk about a little bit in the future here. So this is what I want you to do. Meditate before you go to bed. Put your intentions into a cup of water. And then when you drink the water, go immediately to bed. When you wake up, write down your dreams in the morning and start to develop that practice. And we'll go from there. So welcome to Tay-Tay's Summer School of Mysticism, Magic, and Lucidity, baby. Coming to you live from Table to Rock Beach, Laguna. Enjoy your summer, everybody. I know I will. One of the most beautiful places in the world. Absolutely blessed to be able to come speak to you guys from this beautiful ocean, this beautiful beach here on Mother Earth. Getting a nice tan from our son, our father-son here. So I'll see you soon. Later.